أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين ورحمة للعالمين وصلى الله على آله الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. Yesterday, the panel of 17 judges at the International Court of Justice voted unanimously to order the Myanmar government to take all measures within its power to prevent genocide of Rohingya Muslims. The International Court of Justice has asked the government to report back within 4 months on how it is going to implement the ruling. There are two parts of this whole conclusion that we see this week. On one hand, we see that the Myanmar government was represented at the court by the famous personality Aung San Suu, who defended her government and described the violence as an internal armed conflict triggered by Rohingya militant attacks on government security posts. She argued that there was no mass murder, no rape, no arson. In spite of all the scenes that you see in the TV screens, reports which have come. And this is where we have to remember this message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Hud, ayat number 113, where He says, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا. Do not ever be inclined towards those who are zalimin and oppressors. Otherwise, what will happen? تَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. Otherwise, the fire of Jahannam will get to you. When we talk about Aung San Suu, when she opposed the oppressive military government of Myanmar in the past, she was respected by the whole world. She became an icon of peace and was also awarded honorary citizenship in Canada. But when her efforts for democracy bore results and she became part of the government, she looked away. When the Muslim minority, the Rohingyas in Burma, were brutally oppressed by the Buddhist majority, the military as well as the militants among them. And by going to the International Court of Justice to justify the genocide against the Muslims, she lost her honor and respect totally. However, a point of reflection for us on the other side is that who took up the case of Rohingya Muslims all the way to the International Court of Justice? Who did that? Not any of the oil-rich countries in the Middle East, or in the Far East, or South Asia, or Minor Asia. No. The case of Rohingya Muslims was taken up by a small Muslim country in Africa known as the Gambia. The Justice Minister of Gambia, Tambadou, he visited the refugee camp of Rohingya Muslims in Cox's Bazar, which is in Bangladesh. And his visit there was kind of accidental. He actually had gone with his foreign minister to New York for one of these UN conferences. And from there, the foreign minister was supposed to then travel to Bangladesh to visit the refugee camps of the Rohingya Muslims. Somehow, things didn't work for him as far as his schedule is concerned. So he asked the justice minister who was with him, he said, why don't you go in my place? And so this is where the justice minister ended up there. And what he saw, remember that he was also the former prosecutor at the UN Rwanda Tribunal for what had happened in the massacre which happened there. And so when he visited the camp and heard the story, basically he realized that this is where I see the signs of genocide. And these are his words. He says that I realize how much more serious it was than the flashes we have seen on the television screens. Military and civilians would organize systematic attacks against Rohingya, burn down their houses, snatch babies from their mother's arm, throw them alive in burning fires, round up and execute men and girls were gang raped and put through all types of sexual violence. And this is where, we have to realize that we see two different examples of human, degradation and those who have reached to higher levels. One in the form of Aung San Suu Kyi and the other in the form of this justice minister from Gambia by the name of Tambadou. And, according to one of the journalists from Europe, she says any of the 149 countries who have signed the treaty against, issue of genocide could have instigated the case. But it was the Gambia, under the direction of Mr. Tambadou, that took the initiative, backed by, of course, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, a group of 57 Muslim countries. And this is where we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, blessing him for this noble work that he has done. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the courage to many other, conscious-minded people around the world. And this shows you don't have to be oil rich country. You don't have to be a very large, country as far as resources and numbers are concerned. If the will is there, things can be done at the highest level, inshallah. إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعي إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيكم عباد الله بالتوبة ما سلف من ذنوبكم. Let me try to derive a lesson for ourselves personally from the example of Aung San Suu Kyi. That you look at the past and you look at the present. And this leads me to this concept that for us it is not important what I was before. It is important to realize what I am now. It is important to know in what state will I die. I might have done very great things in the past, in the early stages of my life, but what was my state when the time came? And this is where we have to realize this famous dua, which I have not seen from the Ma'sumin, so we call it dua ghayr ma'thura, but it's there in the writings of the ulama, Allahumma ja'al awaqib umurina khayra, which means, oh Allah, make the end of our affairs to be good. We don't care about beginning, we care about the end of it. And this is where, since we are now getting into Ayyam Fatimiyya of Fatima Zahra salawatullah alayha, let me describe an example. In the life of the daughter of the Prophet after he passed away, the most visible symbol of suffering was the attack on the house. All the historians, whenever they talk about it, they never say Babu Ali. They say Babu Fatima. This was the house which was attacked. And the demand was that Ali and some of few less than a dozen supporters of him who had kind of sat down in the house as a protest and not pledge allegiance to the Khalifa. And they were demanding that they come out and pledge the allegiance. And when they attacked the house, one of the first person who came out with his sword drawn was Zubayr bin Awwam. And Zubayr was a cousin of Ali. He was a cousin of the Prophet through his mother's side. So his mother was the sister of Abu Talib and Abdullah. And Zubayr was a close supporter of Amir al-Mu'mineen all the way till the third Khalifa's time. Eventually, when the people came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and accepted him to be his Khalifa, in that multitude of people who were there in the masjid, the first ones to do bay'at, to pledge allegiance on the hand of Ali, was Talha and Zubayr. They were the first ones. But what is interesting is that these are the first ones to rebel against Ali. The whole problem of the Battle of Jamal, they were the basis of it. Of course, they exploited and used Aisha in this matter. And this is where we have to realize that, what happened to this person? Zubayr is the first cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First cousin of Ali. Among the first ones who accepted Islam. And he was a courageous person. He fought in different battles on the side of Islam. And even after Rasulullah, he supported Amir al-Mu'mineen's cause all the way to the days of Uthman. But then things change. And this is where we have to realize, somebody who is from the family of the Prophet in a way, deviation can come at the end. And what was the basis for that? Ali actually has a statement around surrounding the events of Jamal. And this is in Nahl al-Balagha, statement number 453, where he says, ما زال الزبير رجلا منا أهل البيت. Zubayr was always a man from us, the Ahlul Bayt, a member of Ahlul Bayt, حتى نشأ ابنه المشؤوم Abdullah, until his evil son grew up. So what was the factor which deviated him? It was his son. His son inclination somewhere else. He was raised in influence of others who were not on the path of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And it was the son, when he grew up, he basically, caused this deviation even in the mind of his own father. And this is where we have to realize when we talk about this concept in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is Surah Al-Anfal, ayat 28, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. You should know that your wealth and your children are fitna for you. What does fitna mean? They can become the cause of your test and trial in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You might be deviated because of that. So it is the mal of dunya, sometimes even the awlad, the love for them to do things what they want. You spend your whole life in the path of righteousness. Things have changed, your children grow up, and then you say, okay, out of that love. And this is where you have to be careful about it. And this is the example of Zubair that we see. And Abdullah, his son, who later on became a partial Khalifa, I would say, after Yazid. Some parts of Hijaz and Iraq he controlled for some time. And he actually, there is an incident where for 40 Jum'ah khutbahs, he would not recite the salawat on Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He would avoid that. And when people went to him and they said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I say it silently." But why? He says, because if you send blessings on Muhammad, you also then you do on his family. And I don't like Muhammad's family. That hatred towards Ahlul Bayt became a reason that he now even avoids reciting the salawat on Rasulullah in Friday khutbahs. And so these are the issues that we have to keep in mind, that, in the grave, Allah is not going to ask me about the iman and the faith and the actions of my family members. I will be asked about myself. And so we have to keep that in mind, and we have to resist, even if it is an influence of somebody who might be very close to us in our relationships. And this is where I will go back to the dua, Allahumma ja'al awaqib umurina khayra. Allah, keep the end of our affairs on the path which is khair and good, inshallah. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى إمام المتقين وأمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى سيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان ما أحيا صار البدو طغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فلو البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام اللهم عجل فرج وسهل مخرجا واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون